On today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast, the Avs are back, and turns out all it took was a goalie not named Alexander Georgiev.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, hi there, ho there. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On NHL podcast, your daily podcast on the NHL. We are your team each and every day, and we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On NHL is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's episode of Locked On NHL, we take a look at the Winnipeg Jets, who are off to the best start of anybody in the NHL so far. We'll take a look at what's going right and how sustainable it is for the Winnipeg Jets to continue to pace the NHL. We'll talk about the Colorado Avalanche having won 4 games in a row and what keyed them being able to finally get back on track. And we'll take a look at the Anaheim Ducks, who are showing some signs of growth. Is it enough? What more do they need as they continue to try to get back to the top of the standings? My name is Seth, Toupal, host of Locked On Wilds, one half of your Western Conference Tuesday dynamic duo, joined by JD Young of Locked On Sharks. And JD, let's start with the old Winnipeg Jets, who are 8-0. And it doesn't matter how you slice the numbers, they're impressive. Leading the league in power play percentage by just an insane margin. They're in the 40% range.
Very sustainable.
It's definitely going to continue to push closer to 50%. 43.5% right now. They're scoring 4.5 goals per game. Just no matter how you look at it, they are just off to a great start. They're allowing 2 goals per game. What's not to like about what the Winnipeg Jets have been doing so far this season?
This team, we talked about it kind of coming into this season. The big question was, like, can this team do something in the playoffs? And they're kind of off to the same start as we've seen. We're just going to be really impressive regular season. They're just kind of steamrolling competition right now. They're getting a lot of production from a lot of different guys right now. Like, it's exactly what I think the dream start that you'd hope for. I mean, you can't, like you said, you can't do any better of a start right now, having gone, what are they now, 8-0 or 9-0? I think it's 8-0 right now.
8-0.
This team is just firing on all cylinders right now. I think it is a beautiful start for a team, especially in the Central. We talked about how difficult this Central is going to be. And, some teams have gotten off the slow starts. Looking at you, Nashville, I think some teams have performed a little bit better. Some teams have kind of found their, perform better. Look at you, Minnesota. Some teams are, kind of finding their footing right now. We'll talk about Colorado here in a little bit. But for a team which we thought was probably a playoff team, but probably more like a wild card, coming out and just kind of putting your stamp on the division already, and just saying, like, come and get it, I think is a really, and especially what's going to be a competitive division that we think could potentially see 5 different teams coming out of the Central. I think is you can't ask for much more right now.
Yeah, and you're getting production up and down the lineup. Only two players so far have played and not recorded a point for the Winnipeg Jets. That's it. And you look up at the top, they've got 4 players with 10 points. They have 8 players that are averaging a point per game or more. You've got scoring from Mark Scheifele with 5 goals. Kyle Connor's got 6. Nikolai Ehlers, a very pleasant surprise in the early goings for the Winnipeg Jets. He's got 4 goals and 10 points. Nino Niederreiter's got 4 goals and 8 points. Up
Cole
and down.
Perfetti.
Yeah.
Cole Perfetti, who is the whole, like, what's the deal with him this all off season? Is he going to, et cetera, et cetera. And he's coming, and we know it's very hard for young guys to kind of crack this lineup. Cole Perfetti finally getting a real opportunity, and he's making the most of it. And it's, again, that, like, I dare you to take me out of the lineup type of performance from him. And that's what makes this team so dangerous, is you can get production from anyone on any given night. And then, of course, there's always Connor Hellebuck in the back. So if you're not getting goal production, you just get me 2. Hellebuck's probably going to save the day for you.
Yeah, and they're winning, like, they're routing teams, but they're also winning tight games, and so they're showing a little bit of that we saw last year from this Jets team, that, you know, you rely on the defense and the goaltending to get you wins. I mean, they start the season, you couldn't have gotten off to a better start by routing Edmonton 6-rip. And then you beat Chicago and Minnesota 2-1 in OT. So those are both very tight games. I know from that Minnesota game, I was surprised because that was the second night of a back-to-back for the Wild. I was surprised at how close and how tight that game was, and yet Winnipeg still controlled play for large stretches of that game. But then 8-3 against San Jose, 6-3 against Pittsburgh, and then all of a sudden 3-2 against St. Louis, 4-3 in OT against Seattle, and 5-3 in Calgary. So they, like, I think it's the whole package for the Winnipeg Jets, because another thing that just does not get a large amount of praise is how you are doing in the faceoff circle, and they're above 50% as a team in the faceoff dot with 4. Basically, your 4 top centers are all above 50% in the faceoff circle too. So not only are they getting the goals and the points, also penalty minutes. They're one of the least penalized teams in the NHL as well. So, like, take your pick. Everything at this point is going well for this Winnipeg Jets team, and I mean, the offense is going to go through some lulls.
Yeah,
that's just how it just happens. Like, it happens to the best teams, it happens to the worst teams. It's just that the best teams get out of it a little quicker than the worst teams do. So the offense is going to have stretches where they struggle to put goals on the board, but having Connor Hellebuck in your back pocket, like, I don't see any reason why this isn't sustainable for this Minnesota Jets. Wow. Winnipeg Jets team. The only thing that could potentially throw a wrench into this is the great equalizer, the thing that you can't account for, and that is injury.
Yeah. One thing and this could be something to look at. It could also be because they've routed a bunch of teams, but this team is kind of weird because if you look at their 5-on-5 play, their Corsi 4, so their shot attempts 4, they're actually below 50%. So they're allowing more teams to take other shot attempts. But when you look at actual shots on goal per game, this team is like 5th in the NHL. So this could be a combination of they're on the power play a lot and kind of racking up a ton of power play shots, which would make sense why their power play numbers are so good. But also games where, you know, you're playing like the Sharks and you're up by a bajillion goals, and you just kind of park the bus and maybe you let them kind of get back into it. So I want to see what happens, you know, as you're not playing some of these basement teams. But again, like, they've won so many different ways now. And I think for those games, like, if this team needs to kind of put the foot on the gas and take over games, we've seen them do it enough in any situation where I think they're going to be doing that. But yeah, I wonder with this team, like, if it feels like the window's hanging in there, like, to not be shut, and how aggressive are they going to be at the trade deadline? And I to try to maybe add that final piece, that final scoring piece. And we could spend, you know, hours kind of looking at who could be potentially available. And it's very early in the season, but who can maybe try to add that guy when it's like, you need a goal, you need it now. Here's the dude to go get it. And I think that's the one thing they're missing right now. They have a lot of guys who could score, but do they have that guy when it's like you're down one, it's 5 minutes left, and I need a goal? Throw him over the boards. He's going to get me one. So,
yeah.
But yeah, they're a good team right now. There's not many holes in that team.
No, there certainly are. You can probably count on one hand the number of things that you'd like to see him improve upon. We talked about the fact that goalie is not one of those things. Goalie was a huge concern for the Colorado Avalanche, but it appears as though they have gotten things back on track. 4 in a row for the Colorado Avalanche. 5 in a row. 5 in a row. We'll talk about how the Colorado Avalanche have gotten themselves up off the mat. I'll give you a hint. It is between the pipes. And we'll talk about that as we continue today's episode of Locked On NHL after this. Today's episode of Locked On NHL is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can get bet $5 can get $150 in bonus bets if you win. If you had the Washington Commanders as your $5 bet, boy, you were sweating that game yesterday or on Sunday. And thankfully for you, the fact that the Chicago Bears cannot cover a Hail Mary means that if that was your bet, if that was your $5 bet, congratulations. You now have $150 in bonus bets for winning. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet and win. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
And if you want to go catch a game at the Tank, go see the Wild do wild things, or go down to Dallas and catch a game with the Stars, you need to check out Game Time. Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They have curated deals that make it easier to find the best price on great seats. Seat views before you buy. Nothing worse than getting to a game and realizing my seats stink. That way you know exactly what your view is going to look like before you even step into the arena. They have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, a bunch of ways to help protect you. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On NHL. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day, continuing to take a peek at some surprises so far in the Western Conference. We move to the Colorado Avalanche, who have found a way to get themselves back off the mat. Hideous start for the Avs on the season, but they now have seemingly cemented themselves. They're 5-4. They're in 4th in the Central. Mm-hmm. And turns out all it took was just making a change in the net, because Justus Annunen has been pretty darn good since he took over for Alexander Georgiev.
Also, playing bad teams helps too.
Yeah.
Colorado has beaten Anaheim, who we'll talk about here in a little bit, San Jose, Seattle, Utah, who's fallen apart, and Ottawa. But again, you have to beat the teams you're supposed to beat. They're beating the teams they're supposed to beat, and they have done it by playing more Colorado style games where you're limiting their opportunities. You're kind of shutting them down. They've only given this before last night when they played, or Sunday night, excuse me, when they played Ottawa. It was 3 goals against Anaheim, 1 goal against the Sharks, 2 against Seattle. They're doing a much better job of limiting the goals, and you're not just bleeding goals like we've seen as the early part of the season where they're giving up 8, 6, 6, and 5, which is no way to live life playing, just giving up that many goals. So you're getting your top guys like Makar and Nathan McKinnon are driving the bus right now. You're good and healthy. You're going to be starting to get some guys back here. But it looks like they have found some sort of answer in the net, and that's the biggest thing, because if this team can win games 4-3 instead of trying to win games 6-5, I think they're going to have a better chance to make a playoff push. And again, this team is going to be getting pieces back here sooner rather than later.
And the first 4 games of the season, the Avalanche power play was operating at 50%. Guess what their penalty kill was?
Probably right around the same mark.
54.6. So that's not great, but if you look at what has happened since, we'll count that game against Anaheim, 5-0. The power play is at 29.4, so that's much more of a normal number.
Yep. Penalty
kills at 84.6%. And so that has come up substantially. You're getting 31.4 shots per game on offense, limiting opponents to 25.6 shots per game. And I think this was one of the things that was so concerning, JD, about that start, is the Avs weren't giving up a ton of shots on goal in any of those games. It's just, you look at the amount of goals that were given up, you can't do that. Like you have to have a goalie just kind of take charge, take control, and even with things in front of you just going completely off the rails, like you got to help a team out and make some key saves to just try to help get your team in front of it. Annunen right now is 0.8 goals saved above expected in the games that he has started so far this year. Got to go all the way down to the absolute bottom of the list, because guess what? Alexander Georgiev was negative 9.9 goals saved above expected in 5 games. So you're spotting teams 2 goals per game. And I don't care. I don't care if you're the Wayne Gretzky-led Edmonton Oilers or any of the other teams that he played on. I don't care if you are the Jaromir Jagr Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't care who you are. You spot a team 2 goals. It's not easy to come back from that.
No, and more to your point of like getting a key save. So 5-on-5 this year, the Avs have given up 75 high danger chances, which is kind of middle of the pack when it comes to that. The Penguins are the absolute worst at 130, but 75 high danger chances. They've given up the second most amount of high danger goals at 5v5, 14. Only the Devils have given up more. So when you're basically, anytime a team gets a high danger opportunity, they're able to take advantage of it. Like you said, you're spotting teams' goals that you just can't spot them right now. And especially for a team that is so, it is relying on its top guys so much. There's not too many other teams in the league that are successfly kind of relying on their top guys as much as Colorado is. And they've gotten production from guys like Colton Ross, Ross Colton, excuse me, who's, kind of come out of nowhere and scored a bajillion goals so far this season. But it's McKinnon, it's Makar, it's Mikko Rantanen. These guys are expected to do basically everything for this team right now, and the hope that they can at least keep it afloat until guys get back. And so far, now that they've found some sort of goaltending, it seems like this Colorado team, their whole goal is to just make it into the playoffs and then see what type of damage we can do here.
Just because I love to continue to pepper these goalie stats, shout out to moneypuck.com. Save percentage on unblocked shots. And to the credit of the Avs, too, they're blocking about 23% of shot attempts that are even going towards the net. Mm-hmm. Unblocked shots that get through, Justus Annunen has a .958 save percentage, which is 18th best among any goalie that's played this year, basically. Alexander Georgiev is at 90.9. And if it's an unblocked shot attempt that gets through, by and large, you hope that they come from outside. You hope they come from deep, and you have done enough work to be able to give your goalie a clean look at what's coming. 90.9 is not good. That is 66th out of 70 goalies. Ville Husso occupying the bottom spot with an .833 save percentage on unblocked shots, which is really bad. Yeah. So turns out good goaltending can solve a lot of problems, and the Avs are getting it at this point with Justus Annunen. Now, I would imagine they'll see Alexander Georgiev again at some point.
Yeah.
You're going to have to. Although, Capo Kakinen.
I know he's in the AHL right now. Could be coming soon. Maybe you just waive Georgiev, and because nobody's claiming that contract, and then you just kind of go from there. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see with the Avs here. They got Chicago tonight before we record this, so they could be 6 wins straight by the time you hear this. But then you play Tampa, who's playing pretty well. Nashville starting to kind of get their footing here. You play the next week. You have Seattle and Winnipeg and Carolina, and then Nashville again. So you got some big tests coming up here. So we'll see if they can, you stack some points against some lesser teams. Let's see what happens now when you start to play some of the big boys. So
the Avs could use one Lucas Dostal. Would certainly help. Anaheim Ducks have a guy by that name who has played pretty well so far this season. We're going to talk Anaheim Ducks and just take a look at what they've done so far this year. What are we seeing from the young Ducks, the Ducklings? Please tell me that's an actual thing. Is it? I don't know. We'll find out.
I don't know.
We'll talk about the Anaheim Ducklings and their development as they continue to try to climb out of the bottom of the Western Conference. That's on the way as we continue today's episode of Locked On NHL after this.
If you want to get in on daily fantasy, but don't want to have to play 10 million people every time, you need to check out Prize Picks. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to everybody. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. So maybe you think Connor McDavid goes off. Maybe you think with Tua back, Tyreek Hill has himself a nice day, or whatever. You get a hunch. You just pick more or less of that player, and then you're good to go. And the great thing about it is Prize Picks is available in over 30 states. So if you're like me, you live in California, where sometimes gambling's a little bit, in the gray area, Prize Picks has got you covered with games in California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. So sign up today and you'll get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive your $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Download the app today and use code Locked On NHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app. Use code Locked On NHL, LOCKEDON NHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game.
Home stretch of today's episode of Locked On NHL. And once again, we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. Make sure to check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey. So as your team racks up the injuries, my fantasy football team lost 2 more players this weekend. I can't, I am hanging on by a thread, and that's just fantasy football. Imagine all the waiver scooping that you have to do with a fantasy hockey lineup. Locked On Fantasy Hockey can keep you up to date on all the players that you should be scooping up. Marcus Foligno, 2 goals against the Flyers. Maybe that's a name.
Mikael Granlund. Wow.
Those could be names. You got to tune into Locked On Fantasy Hockey to hear who you should be looking at on the waiver wire this week. So make sure to check that out for your second listen of the day. JD, as we continue as we move into Anaheim Ducks discussion. Before we talk about the Ducks at large, I got an interesting one for you here. How concerned are you, or how concerned should Ducks fans be about what we're seeing from Trevor Zegras, who has 2 points through the first 8 games of the season?
One of those is an empty net goal against the Sharks.
So, yeah, like 2 points in 8 games coming off of a season last year in which he played 31 games and had 15 points. That was on the heels of 2 back-to-back 60-point seasons and 23 goal seasons. And things just are going in the wrong direction. How concerned would you be seeing what we've seen so far from Zegras this year?
I don't know. Zegras, like, I feel like there's such a lack of commitment, and maybe just because they know more about it than us, and maybe they just don't think Zegras is the guy, or it could potentially a guy, and so maybe that could be a lot of it of kind of what Zegras is doing this year. And like, if you look at his analytics this year, and the Ducks team is they're not a great team and this year, but like, he's kind of, I think he's 13th among skaters out of 22 who've with Corsi percentage. So when he's on the ice, he's getting outshot badly. It's like his goal is 4, he's only 5-on-5 is 3-8. Like, they're not producing a lot of scoring chances or high danger chances when he's on the ice, and those, it's a little bit worrisome here. And I wonder if he is a guy who maybe just needs a fresh start with another organization, maybe a more talented organization where he doesn't have to kind of be the guy. And it already does seem like for Anaheim, where it's, I don't think it's gonna be long until this is Leo Carlsson's team. Like, the way he's played, and like, you just kind of see the way he at times can take his team on his back. He's had some big goals so far this season for Anaheim. So Leo Carlsson's got 5 points in 8 games, including 3 goals this year, 2 of which are game-winning goals, and 1 is an overtime goal. Like, I think he just feels like it kind of already feels like the passing the baton, even though Zegras, I know he's been there for a while, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like he's really kind of found his stride yet. So or maybe he's just more of a complementary player. And I think that just might be something that we need to kind of adjust to, and maybe his role and expectation for, and especially as you add guys like Cutter Gauthier, who's, he's had, you haven't really seen the production from Gauthier, but like, some of the shot numbers are really there, and like some of the you kind of pop the numbers on Gauthier, like he's doing positive things and maybe just not being rewarded for it right now. And I think maybe for a guy like Zegras, where he just may not be that top line guy that we hope for.
Well, and I do like the notion that this is a Ducks team that just kind of, we've seen it over the last few years. They just continue to add pieces to this mix. They continue to add prospects to this mix. And it is looking like a situation where the higher they hit, the better quality players that they bring in, to where it's easy for a guy like that to get kind of overshadowed, because the guys that you're bringing in are just more talented anyway. And that's not to say that Zegras isn't, but I think it is pretty evident that the Ducks are moving on to their next core of players. As far as what happens with Zegras going forward, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a move made at some point, because if you're the Ducks and you look at this situation, is he helping you? Is he going to be helping you build a contender a couple of years from now, or does it make more sense to try to get something in return for him?
Even if it's maybe not draft picks, but like maybe those like close to NHL ready type of guys. You saw like Mike Greer with the Timo Meier trade. Like, he got a first round pick, but like getting a guy like Shakir Mukhamadoulin, who's really was kind of close to the end of making NHL. Fabian Zetterlund, who's was kind of like an AHL NHL type of guy at the time, and really had his breakout season last year for the Sharks. Like, getting guys who maybe fit your with Mason McTavish and fit with Leo Carlsson and fit with, some of their defensemen, and like maybe that makes more sense. Or maybe you just be patient and see if he can kind of work through this right now. So I am curious to see Trevor Zegras I know they gave him a new contract this offseason, but it does maybe they're just gonna be really patient and see what happens here. And this Ducks team that has shown a lot of patience and very under the radar, that you don't know what's going on until something actually happens with them. But it does, you do kind of feel like Zegras needs to start showing something here this year, or else.
Show us a little something if you want to be part of this group going forward. And it'll be very interesting, because I could see a bunch of different GMs wanting to take a flyer on him, because he's 23 years old at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And
it just may pick in the first, GMs are always going to take a 23-year-old high first round pick, and I can fix him. I can fix him, right? You see it all the time. I can fix him. My staff can fix him, et cetera, et cetera. But more of this Ducks team, though, it's so you kind of were hoping this would be the year they would kind of take some steps. And right, they won 3 games this year, and 2 of them against the Sharks, and 1 of them against Utah, who's kind of had their ups and downs. But the offense, they've scored 18 goals in 8 games. That's tied with the Sharks for goal production. The Sharks have played 1 more game, or I guess 2 more by the time you hear this. And again, we're recording before the Monday night games. But it's you just want to but maybe again, results aren't everything. You are seeing positive play from Leo Carlsson. I feel like Mason McTavish, though, has maybe taken a step back this year. Hasn't really kind of been the same player right now. But I think for them, the most important thing is Leo Carlsson's, a full season of Leo Carlsson and Cutter Gauthier, I think, are their 2 most important things right now. And so far, Leo Carlsson looks like he's a dude.
And some good development from Lucas Dostal, who has been great. He's been great so far this season. They've had a couple of other goalie games from, I think it's James Reimer was the
James Reimer with his 450 goals against.
Yeah, not great, but Dostal 3-2-1, 2.17 goals against average, and a .936 save percentage. That all plays great. So,
and if they get Gibson back here soonish, and maybe Gibson doesn't have to be the guy, you can have a true 1A, 1B situation between Dostal and Gibson. Okay, then you don't have to feel so bad about your goaltending situation, and you're hoping that the young players can continue to develop. I think for them, it's just, are you playing not meaningful game, but how are you playing when it comes January, February, March, kind of before the trade deadline is their most important thing is, are you playing good hockey? Are you a tough out? Are you seeing strides from this team? And I think that's the biggest question for them is, can you do that? Do you feel like you have the right players in place, and which of these young players are going to be here long-term, and which of these players you need to maybe turn the page on?
Yeah, it's time you got to identify that core and do whatever you can to up 2.25.
Also, Olin Zellweger, dude's a freaking monster, man.
Yeah, they've got a ton of really good players. Talent. Yeah. It's just
I don't get this team.
2.25 goals per game and a 7.7% power play, which would be the worst in the league if not for the Buffalo Sabres. We got one. Literally, we got 1 power play goal. Beyond that, not good. But this is where the Ducks have been for the last few years. The key is getting out of that realm and working your way up to that next tier of teams. Time will tell. That will do it for today's episode of Locked On NHL. Again, we thank everybody for tuning in to today's edition of Locked On NHL. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe before you head out for the day. Also, make sure to follow us on your favorite audio platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Locked On NHL is keeping you up to date on all things NHL. with new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.